Liberals survive with Singh's support as questions swirl about the size of the deficit? This is Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow.
Navigating the issues that matter to you. It's Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
With 1 week to go until MPs hightail it out of Ottawa and start their long Christmas break away from the House of Commons, all sides are claiming victory. The Conservatives tried and failed to topple the government again with a confidence motion that used Jagmeet Singh's own words, a collection of things he has said in the past about how bad the Liberals are. But in the end, the NDP voted with the Liberals. And for the Conservatives, that was apparently the whole point.
Mr. Speaker, in the spirit of nonpartisanship, we have put forward a motion inspired by the leader of the NDP.
That's right.
He has said that this Prime Minister is weak, is greedy, is selfish, and is beholden to corporate interests. He has pointed out that this Prime Minister has violated the rights of workers. So we took the NDP leader's words, we put it in a motion that includes non-confidence. Will the Prime Minister allow this NDP leader a free vote so that he can vote non-confidence for Canadians?
Leader Jagmeet Singh spoke with news reporters about this vote that, again, uses his own words, bashing the Liberals. Again, he said the Conservatives are just playing games.
It should come as no surprise that we're not going to vote in favor of any of their games, because that's what they're doing. They're playing games. What they want to do is cut your pensions. They want to cut your health care. I want to strengthen pensions. I want to make it easier for you to find a doctor. They want to cut the things that you need and make your life even harder and make it cost more. That is what Conservatives do. That is what they did when they were in power. We're opposed to that. So obviously we're not going to play their games. I'm not going to support a Conservative motion that plays games like that. We're going to keep on fighting for Canadians.
The NDP had its own confidence motion against the government, defeated in the House, called on the Liberals to make the 2-month GST tax holiday permanent and applied to more things like home heating bills and cell phone bills, internet subscriptions, and diapers. The NDP also called on the Liberals to offer those $250 checks to seniors and people with disabilities.
So nearly every other party in the chamber right now voted against giving the working class a permanent tax cut. It's ludicrous. In addition, they also voted against a senior getting that check. They voted against people living with disabilities getting that check. They voted against a single mom taking care of her kids that had to make sacrifices, not getting a check. That's what they voted for. They voted for them not getting a check. I think it's clear that Canadians need someone who's going to fight for them, who's going to fight for tax cuts for the working class, not for billionaires. That's why I'm running for Prime Minister.
The current Prime Minister was nowhere near Ottawa when all of this was going down. Justin Trudeau was speaking to a business crowd in Halifax, and he came to deliver a warning to Canadians. Think long and hard about voting for the Conservatives in the next election.
To deliver a tax break for Canadians for the next few months, every single one of those, Conservative Party of Canada and Pierre Poilievre voted against and stood against. So right now I understand that people are frustrated with where their lives are, about how they feel, about where they're going, about how expensive everything is. But the one thing we get to do in a democracy is reflect on what kind of future we want, what kind of world we're going to leave to our kids, what kind of opportunities we're going to create for our kids next year. And right now we're seeing clear tendencies around the world of easy answers without any solutions, of politics of division and polarization and anger, versus thoughtful solutions that involve rolling up our sleeves and getting the work done.
Back in Ottawa next Monday is the big day. That's when the finance minister will deliver the fall economic update, also known as a mini budget, with many in the capital city wondering just how large the deficit will be. The finance minister promised it would be no more than $40 billion, but if Chrystia Freeland knows the real number, she wasn't ready to spill the beans at the industry committee yesterday.
I don't know why you can't just simply say no to the deficit potentially being $60 billion for this particular fiscal year. Why is that?
I am not going to comment on hypotheticals, and I am not going to comment on leaks. What I can say very clearly is that Canada's public finances are sustainable. As the Parliamentary Budget Officer reported in the summer, Canada's debt to GDP ratio, which is the crucial metric, is the lowest in the G7, and our debt to GDP ratio is on a declining track. That is the key measure of sustainable public finances. It is a great strength of Canada, and it's really important for us all to be clear about that.
Outside of the pandemic years, a $60 billion deficit would be bigger than the deficits that the Harper government ran in response to the great financial crisis of 2008-2009. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. This is News Radio.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
Well, he is back with his hot take on some of the big news stories of the day. From the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University, great to have back. Lee, how are you today?
Doing very well, Rob. Doing very well.
That's good. Well, there seems to be no end in sight, Professor, to the strike at Canada Post.
Yeah.
The management released a new statement last night. It is very negative for the prospects of a resolution to this work stoppage anytime soon. So I would like to ask you some common questionnaires that listeners have, and I don't really know the answer to them, and maybe you would have a better idea. For example, question number one, how can Canada Post continue to lose so much money and still remain in business? What would be your answer to that?
Well, the answer is because it is a government corporation, what we call a crown corporation in Canada, 100% owned by the government of Canada, which means the taxpayers of Canada. And so government crown corporations that are owned by the Fed, and CMHC is another one, and Export Development Corporation, and Farm Credit Corporation, and Business Development Corporation, all of these commercial corporations, as they're sometimes called, have a mandate in their legislations mandating that they're supposed to break even or make a small profit. So it actually says that in the Canada Post statute. Well, anybody can say anything, right? I can order anything, but that doesn't mean it happens. So what does happen when they don't break even, when they lose money? Well, then if the company does not have enough reserves, financial savings, what we would just simply call savings in the bank, then they have to go to the government. Now, Canada Post has been burning through its reserves for the last 6 years. It's been losing money, but it had accumulated reserves from the better years. So they've been burning through all those reserves or savings or cash, and the CEO stated last summer at the annual general meeting, which I watched in its entirety because it was digitally broadcast, he said they're going to run out of money in early 2025. And then the chief financial officer at the same meeting confirmed it. He said, yes, we are going to run out of money. In other words, their losses will have eaten up all of their savings, and now they will have to turn to the government. Now, of course, the government could say, no, we're not going to bail you out. But then what you're really saying, what the government is really saying, is we're closing you down. Because if you don't bail them out, then they can't pay their wages and pay all their other bills. And so the government's going to have to bail them out. I believe that they will, as a short-term, short-gap, stop-gap measure, which is why I've been saying, what are we going to do with Canada Post? Because it's not just let's spank the guy on the wrist and say, naughty CEO, don't do it again. They are experiencing structural deficits. There's no amount of pontificating or waving arms or denying it to make it go away.
I just want to jump in and ask you a few more questions here that our listeners, I'm sure they really want to know the answers to. In its statement yesterday, for example, Canada Post said, we're at a critical juncture in our history, financial pressures mounting and now accelerating with its ongoing strike.
Yeah.
our long-standing role as a vital publicly owned national infrastructure for Canadians and Canadian businesses is under significant threat. The union's demands reinforce the status quo and add significant, unsustainable, long-term fixed costs. Could there, Professor, come a time when Canada Post could be declared bankrupt, insolvent?
Yes. Yes, it's legally possible.
Yes.
Just because the government, I said the government of Canada is the shareholder. That's absolutely true. But it doesn't mean that just because you're the government shareholder that the laws of the land don't apply. There is a law of the land called the Bankruptcy Act of Canada. It's passed by the federal parliament because it's an exclusive federal power under the Constitution Act. And I'm familiar with it because I used to be in a bank, and we used to put businesses into bankruptcy. Well, a crown corporation can go bankrupt too. And if the government doesn't bail it out, it can actually sign papers petitioning the bankruptcy court for it to be placed in under the insolvency legislation. So yes, it can do that. I'm skeptical they will. I think that they would just legislate. What they're going to have to do, let me be very clear. I don't want to dance around on this. Canada Post has the management has one vision to make it a much smaller company that just focuses on parcels. With far fewer workers who are paid less. And Club W is saying no. Well, there's no common ground. That's why they have no solution. The solution, people say, well, what is the solution? There's got to be a solution. Well, there will be a solution. It's going to be the Parliament of Canada, the government in the next Parliament, is going to introduce a bill that is going to impose a legislated solution. And it's not going to be the status quo. Notwithstanding all kinds of people saying, especially in the rural, and I'm from the rural originally, saying, oh, you don't understand this, you don't understand that. If the government says we're not going to pay large annual deficits indefinitely forever into the future, that's why we elect governments, to make tough decisions. They can legislate a restructuring, which is what I predict is going to happen, to become a much smaller Canada Post. Not 65,000 employees, maybe, not that I'm going to say they're going to legislate the numbers, but I'm just giving this as an idea to everybody listening of how much the downsizing will be. And I'm suggesting it's going to be 40,000, 50,000 people are going to be downsized.
Wow.
Out of 65,000, because in other words, there's no, the CEO said this at the meeting, he said, our post office is built to deliver 5.5 billion letters a year. It's now delivering 2 billion, not 5.5 billion, and it's getting smaller by the year. Imagine if my university lost 70% of all the students, but we hadn't got rid of any professors or any support staff. So we continued to pretend we were 35,000 students a year coming in, but all of a sudden we went down to 7,000 students. Well, that's sort of an analogy. You know, they've lost 70% of their business. And parcels they've lost 50% market share in only 4 years. So their two most important and major product lines are collapsing. So when people say, you don't understand, it's an essential service, we have to have the post office. Well, my answer is no, it's not essential because more and more Canadians are not using the post office.
Okay, we have to stop.
All of us, we're privatizing the post office by not using it. We use our cell phones.
Okay, we'll stop here. When we come back, we'll talk about Trump and tariffs and Trudeau with Professor Ian Lee from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. This is News Radio.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
Back with Professor Ian Lee from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. Let's talk about Trump, Trudeau, and tariffs. The Prime Minister was in Halifax yesterday. He was speaking to the Chamber of Commerce there. And he raised the prospect of Canada bringing in retaliatory tariffs on American goods if President-elect Trump follows through and slaps tariffs on Canadian goods destined for the United States. What do you think of that idea, Professor?
It's one of the nuttiest ideas I've ever heard. I think he's doing it because he's down 22 points in the polls. This is a Hail Mary pass. He is desperate because he knows he's about to get annihilated in the next election. And he thinks that by putting on the Captain Canada cape, Superman cape, he can say, I'm standing up to that Donald Trump. I'm a big, strong man, I'm going to take him on. Mano. And people say, yeah, go and punch him in the face. It appeals to those people that have a sort of a macho sense of public policy. Why did I say it's idiotic? And it is idiotic, in the extreme idiotic, because the United States is 10 times bigger. This is ridiculous, people. The United States, and especially with Donald Trump, of all the people you want to punch in the face, I would say Donald Trump is at the very end of that long, long list. He should be saying, Mr. Trump, this is an opportunity for us to renegotiate the entire relationship from A to Z. Not just this tariff on this product, the whole 9 yards. A new NAFTA 3.0, CUSMA 3.0, whatever you want to call it. And everything is on the table. Softwood lumber, dairy, telecom, banking, airlines, the whole 9 yards.
Okay. But this threat of tariffs, I mean, do you view this as an economic thing that he wants concessions on things like dairy and telecom, banking, airlines, whatever? Or is it more of an, Professor, is it more of a national security thing about immigration and drug trafficking?
Trump, I've seen him interviewed over the last 5-6 years, quite a few times, talking about his book, The Art of the Deal, that he wrote years and years ago. And it's very clear that he sees it's very important in a negotiation to use threats and intimidation to get your way, to get your deal. So he's very clear on that. So yes, I do believe, because he's also been very critical of the digital tax. He's been critical of, we keep out foreign American telecom, we keep out American dairy products. He's talked about all these publicly. I'm not making this up. This is on the record, everybody. So this is what he wants, and the border. And so he wants a whole bunch of things. He's got a shopping list. And so we should say, okay, we've got a shopping list too, so let's do a deal, Mr. Trump. You're the guy who says, let's deal. Great. We want to deal too with you. And here's our list, and let's put your list and our list together and see what we can negotiate, because you're a deal maker, Mr. Trump, Mr. President. That's what the Prime Minister should be saying, but he's not.
Okay, we only have about a minute left. We're on the eve of the Bank of Canada's latest interest rate decision. It was a pretty bad jobs report that came out on Friday, really bad. And a lot of people are thinking that maybe seals the deal. There's going to be a jumbo rate cut tomorrow. Quick prediction on what?
There's a consensus it's going to be a jumbo rate cut. I think it's going to be very painful for everybody. And I say, what are you talking about? We all want rates to go down. Yeah? You want your food, fruit, and vegetables and all your food bills to go up? Because the dollar's going to go down big time. If they drop a half point and the Fed isn't moving at all, that's going to crash or trash the Canadian dollar. It's going to go down, and I don't mean by 1/100th of 1 penny. I don't know how much it's going to go down, but it's going to go down significantly, and that's going to raise the cost of all our imported goods, and we import 1/3 of GDP. 1/3 of $2.5 trillion is imported. It's not just fruit and vegetables. For those who say, oh, well, I don't eat fruit and vegetables, I eat meat, you know. Well, we also import John Deere tractors. We import laptop computers. I'm buying another computer this coming next summer.
Okay.
We import all manner of things.
So you're worried about the dollar.
All will go up.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you're worried about the dollar. Okay, we'll see what the dollar does tomorrow. It's not like the loony's been lighting it up lately anyway.
It'll get worse.
It'll get worse. Okay,
it'll go down
have to
further.
wrap it up there. We have to wrap it up there for this week. Great to hear from you.
Okay,
thank you again, Professor. Yeah, Professor Ian Lee, Associate Professor of Management at the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University in Ottawa. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.
There is no question Rob won't get answered.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues
on News Radio, the Newsday panel.
Yes, it is time for our Newsday panel. Chris Sims is the Alberta Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. Chris has been a journalist and a staffer on Parliament Hill. How are you, Chris?
Wonderful. It's not super freezing out here.
That's good. Chris, you're in Lethbridge today, Chris?
I am indeed, sir. Back from Ottawa
right.
And back home here at the land
yes,
of the free.
I saw you. I saw you. Neil Brody is with us, longtime Conservative strategist, spent some time in the Harper PMO. How are you, Neil?
Not so bad, Rob. How are you doing today?
Here, I must ask you because it's creating a lot of buzz on Parliament Hill here, sitting for the House of Commons. On Truth Social, the social media platform, Donald Trump, President-elect of the United States, posted this, quote, It was a pleasure to have dinner the other night with Governor Justin Trudeau of the great state of Canada. I look forward to seeing the governor again soon so that we may continue our in-depth talk on tariffs and trade, the result of which will be truly spectacular for all, ! Donald J. Trump. What are we to make of this, everyone? What is your reaction to this post from Donald Trump about Justin Trudeau? Chris, why don't you take that one first?
Oh, well, maybe we should take it super seriously. This is manifest destiny happening, Rob. We should all line up at the parallel with acorns ready to go. It's Trump. He's making a joke. And anyone who's read his books or watched his show, like The Apprentice, or the millions of times that he was on the World Wrestling Federation TV shows, he does this. This is his way of sticking his elbow into Trudeau's ribs and seeing if he squeaks. So, yeah, laugh at it, because he's joking.
All right. Take
or
it
we
as a
could just
joke.
go
What
fight
do you
with
think,
our
Neil
acorns.
Brody?
You sounded like you wanted to do that, Rob.
No, I don't want to do that. No. Neil?
Well, for the last 4 years, I've been telling my friends and anybody who will listen that I would hope Mr. Trump finds his way back to the White House, because nothing was more entertaining than the years between 2016 and 2020, waking up to see what Donald J. Trump had said to light the world on fire. And much like Chris, this is anybody who gets hot under the collar about this is not doing their job right. Mr. Trump will try and goad and prod and try to find any advantage he can in any relationship that he has. And if you stoop low enough to take the bait, then you just help feed it. Like anybody who does this sort of thing, if you rise to the occasion, it just gives them more license to do it again and again and again. So the best thing you can do when Mr. Trump does something like this is laugh about it and then move on.
Yep.
Okay, well let's move along then. Let's talk about a story that was in the Globe and Mail today from Bob Fife and Steve Chase about tensions. Bob Fife and Marika Walsh on the bylines for the Globe and Mail today. It's about tensions between Chrystia Freeland and Justin Trudeau. Quote, relations between the Prime Minister's office and Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland have chilled as tensions grow over the push for politically strategic spending measures, such as the GST holiday. Multiple sources say risking the minister missing her pledge to keep the deficit at or below $40 billion. Sources say the idea for a sales tax breaks on items such as toys, video games, Christmas trees, alcohol was driven by the Prime Minister's office, as was the pledge to send $250 benefit checks to working Canadians who earned an income of up to $150,000. Finance Department viewed the plan as fiscally unwise. What do you make of this, Chris Sims? What do you think is going on here?
I believe it. One, because Bob Fife always gets the scoop. So that's a really good scoop. And two, I was also hearing, back when they first hurriedly announced this GST holiday, that the bureaucrats, the senior bureaucrats in finance, were hitting the button saying, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And that was evident because apparently a lot of these premiers, especially those with an HST, so they have their provincial sales tax enmeshed with the feds, apparently these premiers barely got a heads up. Like, barely got even a heads up, including Liberal premiers of provinces. So it sounds like this was kind of a seat-of-your-pants decision. So I am not surprised one iota that there is tension between either Ms. Freeland's actual political staff and PMO or the bureaucrats in the department.
Okay. Neil?
I look at this as a slow news day. My read of the article is, as Chris said, Mr. Fife, don't ever dispute Mr. Fife's contacts in the government. But this sounds like the general unhappiness of political staffers who see the end of their employment in official Ottawa and are blaming each other for their current circumstances. There's no quotes from Mr. Trudeau. There's no quotes from Ms. Freeland. There's some staffers saying something. There's some former public servants saying something to Mr. Fife. But there's no what I would call important people talking about things in this article. I don't think Ms. Freeland is in any trouble. She won't lose her job anytime soon. She's proven herself to be a tax and spend liberal as much as the Prime Minister is. And I'll just say, you're getting old when you start a sentence with, I remember when, in the last Liberal government under Jean Chrétien, when his finance minister, Paul Martin, would present a budget that would say, we project a $2 billion surplus, and then magically at the end of the year it'd be a $9 billion surplus. This government under Justin Trudeau has gone completely in the different direction. They announce $20, $30, $40 billion deficits, and then come back and say, actually, we underestimated it's going to be a $50, $60, $70 billion deficit, and they act like that's good news. So the idea that the political, the politician side, the ministerial side, the executive side, is it all worried about increasing deficits? I think is no. There's no evidence of that.
Okay, because I was wondering, Neil, if Freeland or Freeland's people leaked this to the Globe and Mail that we're not happy with the size of the deficit. The deficit's not going to be $40 billion. It's going to be considerably larger than $40 billion, and I don't want to take the blame for it. I want the Prime Minister and his people to take the blame for it. You don't think there's anything to that?
Well, sure. Mr. Trudeau's popularity is declining by the minute. It has been declining by the minute for the last 18 months or so, two years. If I was Ms. Freeland's staff and I was trying to help my boss, I would say, this wasn't our idea and we tried to push back on it. Canadians, the recent polling, Canadians don't like the GST cut. They don't like the being bribed with $250 of their own money. And now that public opinion polls are coming out so vehemently against that, I would try to distance myself from it as quickly as possible.
Okay, we'll be right back. Yeah. Okay, we'll be right back. You can jump in on this, Chris, but we'll have to stop here.
You have questions.
Now You Know with Rob Snow has the answers.
On News Radio.
It's our Newsday panel with Chris Sims, Alberta Director, Canadian Taxpayers Federation, and longtime Conservative strategist, Neil Brody. Did you have anything you wanted to add on the quote-unquote tension between Trudeau and Freeland, PMO and finance, Chris?
Just that Neil's correct, and all you need to do is look at the fact that this Trudeau government, including under Freeland as finance minister, has doubled the national debt. So all of the other governments before this one doubled it. So this is a dumpster fire.
Dumpster fire, okay. Trudeau's new pitch to voters is for voters to think long and hard about electing a Pierre Poilievre-led government. He claims this would mean sliding back on things like fighting climate change, on childcare, on dental care, on other progressive policies. And during a speech in Halifax yesterday, he said, don't vote for change just for the sake of change. That seemed to be his pitch. What are your thoughts on that, Neil?
Well, it's funny. I was at a hoity-toity political event last night in Ottawa, just so you don't have to go. It was the taping of the Paul Wells podcast, and for your listeners, Paul Wells is a former political columnist for the Star, the Globe, National Post, Maclean's, that sort of thing. He had a political panel on, and one of the panelists was Marcy, I believe her last name is Serkis, I think that's how you pronounce it, but it's not, I apologize, who is Justin Trudeau's Director of Policy. And one of the questions put to the panel was, tell me what you see coming in 2025. All the panelists talk about the coming federal election, and Ms. Serkis used the line, voters will have to choose if they want to slide backwards by voting Conservative. So it's nice that they all have
Isn't
the
that
line,
something? Yeah.
and it's all getting used. We've also heard this during the recent U.S. election campaign from the Liberal left when Ms. Harris was fond, maybe overly fond of saying, we can imagine what can be unburned by what has been, that sort of thing. Listen, if the Liberal left in Canada think that that's a winning message, great, good for them. But as a Conservative, I would say to the voter, yeah, we want to take this country back to a time when criminals who use guns got mandatory minimum prison sentences, murderers who kill multiple victims get consecutive life sentences, when promoting terrorism was a crime, when the government worked tirelessly to reduce taxes, when seniors could use income splitting on their tax returns, when parents could claim a tax credit for child soccer registration or guitar lessons, when you could question government decisions and not be called a racist and risk having your bank account frozen. Like, this is a strategy, 100%. Whether it's a winning strategy, we'll see how it plays out over the next 12 months. But I think the Conservatives have a great way to rebut this direction the Liberal Party's going.
Chris Sims.
I agree completely, and I'll add to that. Imagine a time back when we didn't have carbon taxes, back when government-funded media wasn't going out of control, when we didn't have rampant censorship and the government trying to be the arbiter of truth, when the government wasn't seizing your private property in the form of firearms at every turn. This has just been, I try to think of a department that is not a complete disaster, Rob. And every time I look, it's a complete disaster. So just a free comms tip to the Trudeau team, don't talk about going back to before Trudeau. It's not smart because people just look outside their window. They see massive lineups for food banks. They see tent cities where there were none before. They see that they can't afford to heat their home because of the carbon tax. It is not smart politics to try to do that.
All right. Well, let's listen to a little bit of it. We have 3 clips. Let's just listen to the shortest one because we're a little tight on time. This is Mr. Trudeau talking about, Conservatives paying politics, and the Canadians, they'll be thinking when they go into the ballot booth, and they'll be thinking before they vote in 10 months' time. Let's listen to a little bit of it.
They're just not showing any responsible leadership. They're playing politics. They're very good at it. You can just look at the polls and see that that's working. But will it hold? Will it hold until the moment where Canadians actually get to make a choice about the kind of country we are and the kind of solutions we're going to put forward for Canadians in the coming years? That's what we're all going to be watching over the next 12 months or 10 months.
So it doesn't sound like the election is going to be for 10 months by the sounds of it to me. And also, I watched quite a bit of that. He gave a speech and then he did this kind of one-on-one chat with a gentleman. It doesn't sound like this guy's going anywhere. I know there's lots of speculation. Oh, he's going to take a walk in the snow, but I don't get that sense, Neil. What do you think, Neil?
Well, just for your listeners, if they can find the full-length clip of that speaking engagement, take a drink every time the Prime Minister says, actually. You'll be drunk before you finish. No, he's not.
I listened to the whole thing, by the way, gentlemen. I listened to all of it last night for you.
Did you have a drink every time you said actually?
Anyhow, I did every time. You still managed to come on the radio today. Good for you. Okay, all right.
I digress. Yeah. No, he's first off, he can't go anywhere because who would come in behind him to take over what's probably going to be the worst showing for the federal Liberals ever? You can't sell that to anybody. So maybe a year ago, maybe 18 months ago, you could have done that and tried to reverse the trajectory, but you can't do that now. And so, good on him. He's going to ride it out until next October, whenever the next election is going to be, and go down with the ship like a good captain.
Quick comment, Chris?
I would also encourage everybody to go listen to the entire thing because he repeats his claim that the only people that truly feel the cost of the carbon tax, Rob, are those who own 3 big mansions with an indoor swimming pool.
Yeah, we can talk about the carbon tax. He said some interesting things about the carbon tax. When we come back, I'm Rob Snow. It's our Newsday panel.
No question goes unasked or unanswered.
Now you know with Rob Snow returns on News Radio.
Here with Chris Sims and Neil Brody, there's an old line in politics that if you're explaining, you're losing. If you're explaining, you're losing. Mr. Trudeau at this event in Halifax said part of the reason it's a challenge to defend the carbon tax is that it takes 4 minutes for him to explain the carbon policy. Quote, 4 minutes that aren't available in contemporary politics. 4 minutes that can provide a more complex answer than my opponents want you to have. In other words, it's easier to say axe the tax and explain, well, you pay the carbon tax and then you get most of it back. And we keep some of it to fund green projects, stuff like that. But does he have a point? What do you think, Chris Sims?
No, he doesn't. Because common sense dictates you can't give the government a $20 bill and expect a $50 back at no cost to you. That's not how money works. Second, the parliamentary budget officer found in his report that the average Canadian family is out up to $400 net with the rebates factored in. That's just this year, Rob. So I don't know what he's reading, but he's wrong.
So it comes back to this. It's kind of a comms thing. He thinks it's a comms thing. And
No,
if only
he
the comms
thinks
were right, people would understand it better.
his implication here, let's
Right,
just be
okay.
blunt, is that we're all just too stupid to understand his awesome carbon tax policy. That's why he made the little quip about bumper stickers and saying tax is bad. He's disdainful.
Okay. Wow. Neil, what do you think, Neil?
Well, just on the climate change policy side, your listeners in British Columbia will soon be celebrating that province's 20th anniversary of a carbon tax, and let me say there are still floods and forest fires in BC. Listen, I'm surprised he thinks it would only take 4 minutes to explain the government's carbon policy. I've looked at government websites. Their policy is collecting taxes from individuals and businesses. Most of the tax collected from individuals presumably is paid back to them. There's about 500 government employees administering this system of collection and refund. Costs about $80 million a year to administer this program. Of the dollars collected from businesses, the government adds about $2 and then invests $3 in schemes that it hopes it works. So it's not a revenue neutral way to save the planet that was sold to us 9 years ago. Let's not get into the moving targets either. We went from a 30% reduction of 2025 carbon levels by 2030, then zero emissions by 2050, then net neutral by 2050. So I'd love to hear Justin Trudeau's 4-minute explanation and then see how many Canadians would say, yeah, I'm voting for that guy.
Nailed it.
It's incredibly complicated. I don't even know that the public service understands it. As Chris said, there's no regime in which the government takes your tax money and gives 100% of it back to you. It's a shell game. It's a feel-good scheme, and as long as the rest of the world is not involved in it, it's providing absolutely no value to the environment.
Okay, have to wrap it up there for today. Thank you, Chris Sims.
Thanks,
and
Rob.
Neil Brody.
Thanks,
Great
Have a
job.
good day, Rob. Have a good
Bye-bye.
day, Chris.
That's our Newsday panel for today. Talkback. Coming up right after the news.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to Talkback. It's 2 hours of debate and discussion on the big issues of the day. We have a couple of topics in the mix for you to comment on today. We'd love to hear from you. One of them is the Canada Post strike, and the other is change. Change in politics, changes in the air. Let's think about both, and you give us a call, comment on one or both, your choice. Lots of time to hear you out today. 1-833-668-2577 is our call-in line. It's not looking good for the Canada Post strike. It has been 26 days now since Canada Post was shut down and 55,000 workers hit picket lines. And by the sounds of it, the two sides are not even close to striking a deal. The union, Cup W, says it's mad at Canada Post mad at the union. It's quite possible that these two sides are even further apart now than when this strike began. And Christmas Eve is 2 weeks from today. 14 days from today, Christmas Eve. It's sneaking up on us, and the mail is piling up, and businesses are suffering, and charities are suffering, and seniors who rely on Canada Post, they've been left in the lurch, and rural and remote communities are getting the short end of the stick. And the government doesn't seem keen to intervene. It could try and send this off to binding arbitration and get everyone back to work. It could try to get back to work legislation passed through the House of Commons, although that might be a longer shot given it's a minority government. But the government has options. And it's not using any of them. And it continues to insist that these two sides work it out all on their own. And that the solution is at the bargaining table. So our question for you today is this: should the government step in and end this strike? It has tools to do that. Should it use those tools? It ended the strike of the port workers. It ended the strike at the railroads. It is not doing the same thing here. We want to know, do you think it should? Yes or no? What would you say? Be curious to see if opinion trends one way or the other before the end of the show. Should the government intervene and end the Canada Post strike? 1-833-668-2577. That's one topic for today. Another topic is change. And this topic was inspired by some remarks that Prime Minister Trudeau made yesterday in Halifax. He was speaking to the Chamber of Commerce in Halifax. Very partisan speech, I would say. It was much more like a campaign-style speech than a speech, say, about public policy. You know, this is what I'm doing for businesses. This is what we're doing for the economy. He spent quite some time attacking his main political opponent, Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the Conservatives. And Mr. Trudeau's main message, I think, in my opinion, was this. He gets that a lot of people are having a hard time right now. He understands that times are tough. He understands that some people are even mad at him. But he added that people shouldn't vote for change just for the sake of change, because they might be disappointed in the kind of change they get. Here's a little bit, David, let's roll on Trudeau clip number 1. Here's a little bit of this speech from Mr. Trudeau yesterday. Roll the tape there, Dave.
Canadians are fundamentally thoughtful about the kind of future we want, the kind of solutions we're going to put forward to improve our communities, to improve our neighborhoods, to build a better set of opportunities for our kids. And every election is about that as we approach what will be an election year next year. And my only request for everyone is to be really thoughtful and go into the choices you make with eyes wide open. I think there's a number of folks in different countries, and I won't point out any particular one, where folks are going to be wondering about the choice they may be made in elections. Let's not be that kind of country in Canada. Let's be deliberate about the choices we make. If we want to stop fighting climate change, if we want to re-legalize assault-style weapons, if we want to put back into question women's rights, if we want to scrap $10 a day childcare across the country and stop delivering free dental care to vulnerable seniors, then in a democracy, that's a choice people can make. Get rid of the CBC, too. That's a choice people can make. But let's take on the responsibility as electors, as thoughtful agents of change in our communities, to be smart about, no matter how much we want change, let's not fall into an easy trap of voting for change for the worse. Canadians deserve better, and I know they're going to pick it.
Don't vote for change for the worse. Canadians deserve better. So you hear it there. We did all this stuff, and we are the Liberals. We are fighting climate change. We're fighting for gun control and women's rights and child care and dental care and defending the CBC, all of this stuff. And all of it would be at risk if you vote for the Conservatives. You'll regret it. That's his warning. You'll regret it. But the polls are clear on this. Canadians want change. Change is in the air. When a pollster surveys Canadians are saying they don't think the country's going in the right direction. They want a change in government. They want an election. We want to ask you today, if you're one of those Canadians that would like things to change, what is it? And be specific. What is it that you want changed? Canadians say they want change. What kind of change do you want to see? If there's a new government, what do you want that government to change? 1-833-668-2577. All of our phone lines are available right now.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Two topics for you today. One is the Canada Post strike, 26 days and counting. Christmas Eve, 2 weeks from today. Should the government intervene to end the strike at Canada Post? Also talking about federal politics today. Canadians say they want a change, but what kind of change do you want to see? If there's a new government, what do you want that government to change? 1-833-668-2577. Kate in Rocky View. Hi, Kate. Good to hear from you.
Hi.
Hi, Kate.
Hi. Sorry. Yeah, I listen to you all the time, and I love the show.
Oh, that's very kind of you.
We are rural farmers, and it is blowing my mind how much this strike, the postal strike, is actually affecting us. I was not expecting it at all. And I'm currently sitting outside of a large corporation. Hello?
Hi, Kate. I can hear you. Your phone is just dropping out, Kate.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
How I'm wondering, there's not a lot of pressure from large corporations to the government to end this postal strike because they are all cashing in on being able to make us all go digital now. There are a lot of our bills and things that we do receive in the mail still. We choose to do that. But now they're calling us saying, hey, let's get you on direct deposit now so we don't have to email or mail you out anymore. So I think the lack of pressure from these large corporations is causing the slowdown.
Okay. Do you think that the government should intervene and end the strike at Canada Post?
Yes.
You do? Okay.
Yes, I do.
All right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Particularly for seniors and businesses, smaller businesses that do rely on this. But I don't think the government wants to because of the lack of pressure from large corporations.
Okay. Yeah, they also don't want to anger union members. That's another driving force. They're all chasing the votes of union members right now. I think that's another big factor as well. Kate, I really appreciate your call today in Rocky View, Alberta, and hope you'll call back again sometime. Thanks for listening. To Rob in Calgary. Hi, Rob. Go ahead, Rob.
Hi. I just have two quick comments on both. The first one with the Post, I think they should just let it die naturally like Greyhound, Blockbuster, and come up with a new business model that works instead of spending $1 billion a year plus on something that isn't working. And I'm a senior. I'm 80 years old, and it hasn't affected me because I've gone through this before and planned for it.
I see. Okay. So on the question of the government, I'm sorry, Rob, on the question of the government intervening to end the strike, you don't think so? Just, if they want to blow up Canada Post all on their own, let them do that?
Yes, and then come up with a business model that works in today's society. You can't have something that, like Blockbuster, it died because society changed. We get it all streamed and everything else. The post office in its current form does not work. End of story. And we can't keep spending billions of dollars a year to keep it working.
Okay. On change, you wanted to comment on our question about change. What kind of change would you like to see?
I'd like to get a change with a prime minister that says, first budget he put out said that budgets balance themselves. I think in his 10 years, it's proved that they don't balance themselves. And he's put us in a part where change that he's put my great-grandchildren in a position that they're never going to be able to prosper in Canada because we've got too much debt. And all these programs that he talks about, they never put a price tag on how they're going to pay for dental, how they're going to pay for $10 daycare, how they're going to pay for anything. They just keep adding it to the debt, and it's out of control. And if you give him another 5 years and he doubles it, or even if he halves it a much again, we're never going to be paid for it. We're going to be a third world country, and that's where he's heading. So the change is is get somebody that understands budgets.
Budgets. So yeah, debt, deficit, taxes, fiscal policy. Fiscal policy would be a priority for you. That's what you'd like to see in a new government. You would like to see that changed. Okay.
That comment he said that budgets balance themselves, I knew we were in trouble when he said that, and that was within the first year of him getting elected. They don't.
All right. Thank you.
Themselves.
Thank you. I think that was even before he became prime minister, I think. Thank you. I appreciate your call, Rob in Calgary.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Should the government intervene to end the strike at Canada Post? And in federal politics, Canadians say they want to change. What kind of change would you like to see? Joel in Medicine Hat on change. Joel. Hi, Joel. What's your opinion?
Hey, Rob. How are you? Can you hear me, Rob?
Everything is good, Joel. Go ahead.
Yeah, regarding Canada Post, let's just let it die. It just doesn't seem to be working very well. They need either new leadership or let it die. It hasn't affected me at all. All I get is flyers in my mailbox, so that's that. Regarding Trudeau, Canada's biggest embarrassment, that needs to die also, and hopefully it will in the next election. I think Canadians got fooled once, and they won't be fooled twice. Just been a total disaster. Investment's been driven out of our country just through liberal policies and their incompetence. The NDP.
So if you're not a fan of Mr. Trudeau, and clearly you're not, and it would actually be, I guess, fool me 4 times if he wins re-election again. But if you want to change, what specifically would you like to see changed? If you want a new government, what do you want that new government to do?
I want them to promote investment for Canadians.
Promote investment.
Investors. Like Kevin O'Leary said it well. Investors ran. Once Trudeau got into office, they had to run because of the uncertainty and their policies. We just need good leadership. This government has just become bloated. Deficits. They just don't care. I want to see partying in the streets in the next election when Trudeau is removed. I want to see it just like a dictatorship is removed. Right. Party, Canada, let's party in the streets. Thank you.
All right. Okay. I got you, Joel, in Medicine Hat. Thank you, Hat, to Halifax, Nova Scotia today. Dave also wants to talk about federal politics and the appetite for change. Hi, Dave.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call, Rob. Can you hear me? There was a little bit of distortion there on the other end.
Yeah, I hear you just fine, Dave. Perfect, I hear you just fine, Dave. What's your opinion?
Cool. Well, you know what? First of all, with Canada Post, I think no matter what happens, sadly, the employees will never make up for lost wages after 26 days. So that's one thing. I think we got to keep it running to a certain degree. You can see the small businesses that are suffering. So whether it's run at a loss or what have you, it's just like transit, right? Transit doesn't make any money. So there is some things. It's going to have to be whittled down, but that's my comment on Canada Post. Would change, absolutely. I think we're tired of the far left mentality, wokeism, if you will. We saw that down in the United States. People are ready for change. And you know what, Rob? We need change. I mean, whatever's going on right now is not working. And I don't disagree with Trump. But honestly, I welcome it. I applaud it with the fentanyl and the drug trafficking and the illegal weaponry on both borders. And it's happening here. We have no port police in Vancouver. No port police in Vancouver. So can you imagine? We're going to have to tighten up our buckles and bear with it. I don't think I'm worried about the tariffs too much, but no, I welcome change. And I'm a right-leaning person now. But in all fairness, in past I was with Greenpeace. I was a member of Greenpeace. I voted NDP when I was in Vancouver. I'm now in Halifax. I've been through many decades, seen a lot, and I'm ready for the Conservative government. And I think it will bode well with Trump, honestly, because Trudeau is a wet noodle. He's a target for Trump, and Trump does not like him. You know, he's wimpy. He's lost. He's 220. What is it? Double digits down.
I don't know. I mean, Trump is certainly trolling him. I mean, Trump is calling him. We'll have to wrap it up there. I have you loud and clear. That's a very interesting background that you have there. I mean, Trump is trolling him now, calling him the governor of the great state of Canada. My goodness. I don't know what to read into that. Our panelist today said, just take it as a joke. He's just joking. I hope so.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
2 topics for you today. Christmas Eve, 2 weeks from today, and Canada Post is still on strike. Should the government intervene to end the strike at Canada Post? We are also talking about federal politics with Canadians saying they want change. If you're one of those Canadians who would like to see a change in federal politics, what kind of change would you like to see? Kyle in Waterloo up next. Kyle, what's your opinion today, Kyle?
Hi, Rob. Thanks for taking my call. First-time caller. I mean, as it relates to government change, I think more forward or inward thinking, particularly at this junction in time in our country. I think our government right now has been spending an awful lot of time trying to make international headlines, being the leader of economic and climate change, the leader of each and every other thing that they put their mind to. And quite frankly, it's costing Canadians billions of dollars. We've got homeless people. We've got teachers, a teacher deficit, a medical deficit. You know, we're spending tens and hundreds of millions of dollars on a gun reclamation project that's going to send guns to Ukraine. Like, let's stop supporting other people when the people that are in our own backyard are dying of starvation just about. And I'm exaggerating, but am I really, though? You know, I live in Waterloo. Waterloo keeps building bike lanes. No one in Waterloo rides a bike. And Waterloo's striving to be the smartest community in Canada and the world. As you know, they've been chasing this ever since they received that designation 10 years ago. And it's the same thing here. It's like, let's try and be world leaders. No, let's try and be leaders within the community that we live in and the country that we live in first, because we've got some problems right now that need to be solved. And instead it's, hey, here's a carbon tax. Here's why it benefits us, when our neighbor to the south doesn't give a rat's behind about it. Neither do the 3 to 5 largest contributors to carbon. Quick note on Canada Post. Do you lose $1 billion in a year, $700 million in a year? I'm sorry, but if you're unionized and that's the losses that are being sustained, it's time for a back-to-work legislation. Let people quit. They'll find jobs somewhere else. Every other courier company seems to be bustling with hiring and everything like that. But I'm sick and tired as a taxpayer of subsidizing small business through Canada Post and subsidizing mail to support 60,000 employees. Force them back. If you don't want to go back, and find another job. It's a tough economy out there.
Okay,
all right. You have a job and you're not willing to work for it.
All right, Kyle. Thank you. Okay. They would say they're just, they're trying to defend those good paying jobs. They don't want to see what they call the gigification of Canada Post. That's their line, not mine. Let's go to Kelly. I think Kelly wants to talk about Canada Post as well in Calgary today. Go ahead, Kelly.
Hi, Rob. I'm kind of looking at it in a bit of a different way. I think he doesn't want to do the back to work legislation, because if he does that, that's going to cause some rifts between him and Jagmeet, which could cause it to topple the government, and that's not what he wants to do. It's a different look at the situation, and I think in the long run, yes, he should do the back to work legislation, but it's going to cost him his position.
Yeah, I think it would be very difficult for the government to pass back to work legislation through the House of Commons. I'm not even sure the Conservatives would pass back to work legislation, that given that they've spent so much time talking about how they're there for workers. These people are not there for workers. They're beholden to corporate interests, all of this stuff. I think all of the parties, I would even include the Bloc Québécois, they'd like the Trudeau Liberals to kind of wear this one, I think, for as long as possible. Unfortunately, that leaves them the option to send it to binding arbitration without going through the back to work legislation. That's what they did with the railways, for example, and with the port workers. Would you support something like that?
No. Either way, I think the NDP wouldn't support that either. They're not a big fan of binding arbitration either. They want the
but they wouldn't need the NDP in that case.
Well,
the labor minister could just go to the labor relations board or the industrial relations board and ask for it.
But there's 2 more votes of confidence coming up, and that's where it could be an issue.
Well, maybe, but there's been no evidence that the NDP is in any hurry to bring down this government, sir. Really?
Yes, I see that, but I understand, but it's an option.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Good to hear from you. Ann Coeur in Calgary calling again. Hi, Ann Coeur. Good to hear from you again. What's your opinion today on our topic?
Hey, Rob, I want to make some quick comments. Canada Post, everybody and anybody has made a comment on it. We all know it's a dying, it's a dinosaur. Although it can become, a behemoth, and with power, it's got the biggest reach than anybody. It just needs to flip the mindset to become how do you make money, and then instead of providing wages, comfort, and all that, pension, provide dividends. Anyway, I don't want to borrow your time on that. I want to make a couple of quick points about what kind of government we want. I think what we need really is truly that passion and that love and respect and self-respect for our country first and foremost, and leaders that truly want to work for the betterment of people at large. I know it's a naive and it's a kumbaya view, but I think a lot of people that we have in the government and in opposition, frankly, are all playing to the galleries. They're all pandering. They all know that what it's going to take for them to win the votes, rightly or wrongly. And we miss the whole concept about one nation. I chose this country, and I hope you can see the passion in my voice when I'm speaking. It pains me that we got everything that any country would want. We can be the richest country in the world, yet we are hell-bent at killing everything that we have. Now even the whole idea of our country, with going along and laughing about what Trump is saying. I know he's a bully. He's whatever you want to call him, and I hate Trudeau. It's not about him or Trudeau. I think it's about this whole concept that, do I have any self-respect for myself, my fellow beings, and my fellow citizens? He's calling our country the great state of America. He's calling our prime ministership, which is a position. It's not Trudeau. It could be anybody tomorrow, the governor. And it's like any joke that is a bad joke to begin with, but few people laugh along, and then he keeps on repeating it and name-calling it, and then that becomes a trend. I just hope people see through this, and he does not start commenting on it all the time, putting us as governor, and it's disrespectful. Right. It's beneath the whole office and beneath him as our biggest ally and incoming president. Aren't there protocols for that? So just making a quick comment on that. I hope people see what great country we have. I mean, really, we can be the richest country if we think like one.
Okay, thank you, Anchor. I have to run. We're really tight on time. Thank you. 1-833-668-2577.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Should the government intervene to end the Canada Post strike? In federal politics, Canadians say they want change, but what kind of change would you like to see if you're one of the people who says, I would like a change? Rob in Cambridge, thanks for calling, Rob. You're on the air. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Rob. I'm now on. The question I have is I'm keep hearing all these businesses and people say it's cheaper to ship with Canada Post. And if it is, and we expect it to run like a business, why are we questioning it now? And yes, if the leadership has left it to almost a month-long strike, there seems to be a problem at the top as well as all through it. Maybe that needs to be revisited. But why did,
right?
We appreciate how the Canada Post can deliver through these rural areas cheaper than the others. But nobody has questioned why or how. How? So it must be subsidized. Maybe that has to be an end coming up the way. But I don't know about it.
Okay.
If it's worthwhile. I don't know. It'd be nice to see them intervene. But you know what? That's going to interfere with bargaining. No matter who you're going to intervene with, is it going to be in time to save anything?
Right.
I don't know. So I'm really up in the air as well.
Yeah, that was another question I've had. If it's 2 weeks until Christmas, is it too late to even intervene to kind of save Christmas if it's 2 weeks until Christmas? Could Christmas even be saved, I wonder?
Even if maybe they would order them back to work for over getting the packages held in the warehouses, get them out. That would be a thing.
Right.
And get checks or medical stuff, that would be a thing, and that would be viewed upon. And then continue, and then get a resolution for sure, and then start to restructure it from get rid of the top down, restructure it and remake it, and it should be able to
restructure, remake,
and make it run like a business. And now, when people say they want change, I fear of the change baby coming, because the first easy thing a government could cut back on is pensions. Your Canada pension, your old age security, they can do it, and you don't have much fight to have that. As well as will they claw back the pharmacare that was put across for seniors and people across disabilities across the country that are much needed. That's what I fear, and that's because we're vulnerable and we can't. All they have to do is say it's going to be done, and it'll be done. And there's enough poverty as there is, and that'll increase it more. Unless you have a lot of savings or a house behind you, it's going to cause more problems. So that's what I worry about is the pension cuts, and even possibly for disability pensions, and maybe even helping with the Medicare for with your different illnesses, and with diabetes or with cancer. They're already saying how much extra people have to pay out for cancer. And that's terrible to think if you're a Canadian citizen living there.
Yeah, did an interview about that yesterday. Right. Okay, so you're worried about what change. You're worried about what kind of change could be coming. Thank you, Rob. Thank you. I'm going to move. I got you. Okay, thank you, Rob. To Bernie in Mississauga. Bernie, hi, Bernie.
Yeah, hi, Rob. How you doing? Good show.
I'm good. Thank you, Bernie.
To change, I like to see a majority NDP government right across the country. I think it'd be a breath of fresh air from the Tories and the Liberals that we've had for millenniums. So that's the change I like to see. I like to see them give the NDP, the people in this country, give the NDP a chance to form a majority government, federal government. As far as the post office strike goes, that I don't think the government should intervene. I think they should let it wear it out, and their previous callers are saying, take an inventory of what's happening on the inside when it's settled and try to save it. Because for the rural areas and for small business and everything, it's a good system. It just needs to be tinkered with.
Well, tinkered with. I mean, it's on track to lose about $1.2 billion this year, Bernie. That's a lot of tinkering.
Yeah, well, look at the ball player just got signed a contract for $675 million. Elon Musk is worth $200 billion. And there's all kinds of capitalists running around with rents, gouging rent and food prices and everything. The money is there. It's just got to be redistributed. And you got to have a government that has the fortitude to do it. And I think that Mr. Singh and the NDP have the right mettle to do what has to be done for this country.
All right. Thank you, Bernie. Not surprised to hear you espouse that opinion today, but you're welcome to it. Thank you.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Should the government intervene and end the Canada Post strike? Also talking about federal politics today. Canadians say they want to change. What kind of change would you like to see? Hakim in Calgary. Thanks for calling, Hakim, on Canada Post. What's your opinion on this strike?
Yeah, thanks, Rob, for taking my call. I think 100% government should step in and should fix this. Otherwise, what is the point having government in the first place, to be honest with you? They should fix this problem. And those folks who work for Canada Post, those are like paycheck to paycheck. I mean, if they are protesting there and they're demanding things, I think 100% they are right. They just want to change things in their benefits. You know what I'm saying? So government should step there and step in and should fix problem not just for 1 year or 2 years, for good, like forever. Like they should fix it. They should fix it. It's their responsibility. Second of all is the government. To be honest with you, as a Canadian, we wanna something different. We want something new. We want a new energy. We want a new government, to be honest with you. We want everything new. And to be honest with you, this is a huge wake-up call from this guy named Trump. We should count on ourselves. We cannot rely on United States. We have to make our things here. They impose tariffs, we're going to impose tariffs. You know what I'm saying? We're going to build our economy here. We are never going to be U.S. We are Canadians, and we die for that, and we will be always Canadians. This is it's unacceptable to me. He's making a statement, you want to be 51. No, go fix your homelessness in the state, fix your housing problem, and then we will think about it, buddy. Okay, Rob? Thank you.
Okay, Hakim, thank you. Thank you. Joe in Kitchener. Joe, you're on the air. Share your opinion, Joe, today.
I want change. I'm tired of passive communism. Let's become a U.S. state. I don't want to pay 30%, not 50% with Trudeau with his hands in my pocket. I don't want to pay for your child care. I don't want to pay for your teeth. I don't want to pay for your dental program. I pay for private health care. I don't want to pay for yours. I don't want to subsidize your mail delivery. I don't want to pay for your stupid gun buyback program. We're a joke on the world stage. We're going to get kicked out of NATO, thanks to Trudeau, and I'm tired of apologizing for being a Canadian. I don't know what even the hell that means anymore. Do you?
Okay, but do you not think that there should be, Joe, a social safety net in Canada to take care of people when they're down on their luck?
No.
You don't? You don't? Really?
I want everybody to take care of their own ass like I do. I don't need to take care of everybody else's because I don't benefit from that.
Yeah, but what would happen, Joe, if your circumstances changed and you were down and out? Wouldn't you like a social safety net there to take care of you? It sounds like you're doing okay now, but life can come at you in an instant, Joe, and life can change in an instant. You never know what the future holds, my friend.
I've always been able to take care of myself, and I've never had to rely on anybody else. And that's how I'm going to die. That's how I'm going to die.
Okay. All right, Joe. It's not the first time I've heard something like that, like just completely dismantle the social safety net of Canada. I'm a pretty right of center guy, but that's not something I'm totally down with. But you are, and that's okay. 1-833-668-2577. We'd be there for you, Joe. If something happened to you, we'd be there for you. Wow, what a first hour. We'll be back. Second hour of Talkback coming up right after the news.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to hour number 2 of Talkback. Hour number 1 was very busy. We've been talking about 2 topics today. One is the Canada Post strike, 26 days and counting. Christmas Eve is 2 weeks from today. We're asking, should the government intervene and end this Canada Post strike? We've also been talking about federal politics. All the polls suggest Canadians have an overwhelming appetite for change. They want a change in government. I'm asking you, if there is a new government, what would you want that government to change? 1-833-668-2577. 2577. Right back to the phones we go. Nicole is in Calgary. Hi, Nicole. Thanks for calling. You're on the air. Go ahead.
Hi, how you doing? I'd like to talk about Canada Post. I don't think the mass majority of people understand that it's a service. So what happens with this service is they're keeping prices realistic. So Canada Post, you can send a box all across Canada for a flat rate of one of those prepaid boxes. You put that at DHL, UPS, anything like that, it's weight and it's distance. So people, small businesses, everything like that, they need Canada Post to be there to keep costs low. Otherwise, everything is going to be out of control. I also think that there was strategic spending by the corporation to look like they'd lost way more money than they did. Pandemic, obviously, everybody's going to lose money. They were called heroes, the employees at the time, and now they won't even give them, benefits. People are off on cancer leave, and they've taken away their benefits. Besides that, I don't see one politician who you normally yells, hey, we need good-paying jobs for these people, and this is a good-paying job. We can afford to go spend at a hairdresser, get a pedicure, put our kids in sports, if you have two incomes of it in a household. Why aren't people caring about how this 55,000 employees across Canada? It's a decent job. We need to keep it. It helps companies stay low costs for things. You think Amazon won't jump things up? You think UPS won't jump things up if they don't have this baseline of this public service company? It's not supposed to make billions, and that's what they're trying to do, privatize it. It's a shame.
Okay, but is it supposed to lose billions? Because that's what's happening. It's losing billions.
Oh, I think that if you got rid of a lot of the people with white collars sitting to do one job for 180 grand, cut at the top. They're like 50. Do you know that the CEO sits on Purelator's board too? That's ridiculous. So what they can just send all the business to Purelator, no problem, because there's dividends there. Whereas Canada Post is a service.
Well,
and you know what? We never lost money, ever, until the pre-pandemic, unless they restructured, bought land, bought equipment, which is always used equipment from UPS or U.S. Postal Service, which is smart. Why not? Because they're tenfold that we can take the working parts. There's been some good decisions, but this is strategic right now from up top. Our infrastructure across Canada.
The management, if I could just interrupt, the management says this is going to be the 7th year in a row that Canada Post has lost money.
Well, did management tell you how much renovations and land and equipment was purchased? If you drive by any, like the plant in Calgary, there's tons of rental 5 tons. It's not managed properly. I actually had a conversation with Stephen Harper years ago when he was he came into a restaurant I worked at when I was younger, and he had said Canada Post has been mismanaged for 80 years. And at his time, too, I think he was licking his chops to privatize it because it does make money if you want it to. But that's not the point. It's being mismanaged on purpose, in my opinion. And small businesses
All right, Nicole. I hear you. Thank you. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you. I have other callers I have to get to here. As we move along to Rick in Dartmouth, you're on the air. Rick, go ahead with your opinion on change in government.
Hey, Rob. Well, I think almost everything has to be changed within the purview of the Liberal way of governing. But that's, that's just me and the majority of the rest of Canadians. What I would like to add, though, is regarding Trump, and, I hear all the opinions on it, so I'm not even going to go there, but here's what I would do. I would, if I was, Pierre Poilievre, he might even do it, I would support Alberta and Saskatchewan in their energy industries and offer the United States a good deal on energy. And within that framework of, hey, we'll give you this, and and what are you going to give us back? It would be a win-win. Right now, the oil and gas industry are stifled by as many different rules as you could find in Canada, where other countries don't have those. So that's what I would do. I would get rid of the CBC. I would, reform Canada Post. Ian Lee is correct. He's like always correct. I don't know why he isn't like consulted by the government all the time. Maybe he is. Anyway, that's all I got.
All right. Thank you, Rick in Dartmouth.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Canada Post and change in politics are two topics for the day. Should the government intervene to end the strike at Canada Post? And Canadians tell pollsters it's time for a change. If you're one of those people who thinks it's time for a change, what would you like to see changed? 1-833-668-2577. Kyle in Listowel today. Kyle, thanks for calling. What's your opinion?
My opinion is going to be on the Canada Post strike. I think, honestly, they should just let it drag on as long as they can. I know people are complaining about Purolator, UPS, those big corporate companies, but just remember, 90% of the businesses in Canada are small business, including small business couriers. I'm putting in my stops right now, Rob, and I've got 75 stops to do this afternoon still by delivering stuff so that way people can get it before Christmas time. And I know people are complaining about, you can't do it for 99 cents. Well, of course not, because we're not in the business to lose money. We're in the business to make money. And sure, is it costing these customers a little bit more money? At the end of the day, yes. But you know what? It's not sitting somewhere. It's actually being delivered. So that's what I got to say. Let it drag on. Let it die off. Contract it out like the United States does when it does come back and privatize it or something. But get rid of it, I think, in my opinion.
Get rid of it. Okay. All right.
Yep.
Thank you, Kyle, for calling. 1-833. Thank you, Kyle. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. It's been very busy so far, but for the first time, we have 1, 2, 3 lines available there for you. So why don't you grab one? Peter also wants to talk about Canada Post today. He's in Calgary. Go ahead, Peter.
Oh, hi. Good morning or good afternoon. How are you?
I'm good, Peter. Thanks. Go ahead.
Quick comment on both the strike and government reform. Honestly, I think if we were to consider essential services as non-strikeable, and this is just a personal opinion, then we shouldn't allow them to strike. However, they do need a big stick in order to defend themselves. So my thoughts were maybe to change the government so that there is sort of an essential services council that is overseen or regulated through sort of like a Department of Regulatory Responsibility, Financial and Regulatory Responsibility. And this council would have the ability to work in Parliament to either have a say in non-confidence voting or policy and procedure creation and law and that type of creation. So it gives them a big enough stick, but if it's an essential service, let's say like police or fire department, really should they have the ability to strike and put people at risk or hurt the economy in such ways, such as a hospital, for example? And if they can't strike, they should have the power to make the changes they need in order to have good quality of life.
Okay. So just building on that, do you think Canada Post should be able to qualify for, something like an essential services designation?
And that's a personal opinion of mine. I believe they have enough impact on the economy and people in general that they could qualify as an essential service. Of course, we have the ones that are critical to life and health, military, police, hospitals, EMS services and such. But because they are so important to us, we still need them as a service. They have to be reliable, but they have to be governed, regulated in order to make sure they're not taking advantage of financial situations or politics in order to line their pockets. But they need a big stick in order to make sure that their quality of life or that they're not hurting, financially or not asked to do 80-hour work weeks, things like that. They're not slaves, they do qualify for, the human condition, but they are essential to us as a society operating.
Okay, Peter. I'm not sure if I would declare Canada Post to be an essential service, but I do thank you for your time today. People are finding a way around it. The question is at what cost, I suppose. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. I mean, Canada Post sent out a statement to the news media. It's done this from time to time as there have been developments in this story. And it says that the demands from the union, quote, reinforce the status quo and add significant and unsustainable long-term fixed costs. One example is continuing to demand the contracting in of all services, making our facility cleaning staff and other contracted support services permanent Canada Post employees. And then the statement has this whole section called Our Deteriorating Financial Situation. And this is how management sees it. Okay. Now it's one side of the story. But it says Canada Post is at a critical juncture in its history, with financial pressures mounting and now accelerating. With Cup W's ongoing strike, our long-standing role as a vital, publicly owned national infrastructure for Canadians and Canadian businesses is under significant threat. Canada Post will record another significant loss in 2024, the seventh consecutive annual loss for the corporation, and since 2018, Canada Post lost more than $3 billion. And then it outlines what the company has offered the union and what it wants to get from the union. Quote, changes to our mail-based delivery model that would allow for affordable and reliable weekend delivery and other improvements, maintaining our largely full-time delivery workforce while creating weekend part-time positions, providing benefits, guaranteed hours, and opportunities for temporary employees. Focused on providing good jobs for our people, building on what we already have. Wage increases above previous offers. 70% of current employees are at the maximum current salary range, making more than $30 an hour plus overtime and cost of living allowance payments, providing good pensions for retirement, maintaining up to 7 weeks of vacation and 13 personal days. Wow, 7 weeks of vacation and 13 personal days. That's pretty good. Just in my own opinion, maintaining stringent job security provisions. So look, that's the management's point of view. We're losing money hand over fist. We think we're being fair. If something doesn't change, things are going to get really tough. And its position as the union is being unreasonable. Again, that's the management's position. And remember, what is the first casualty of war? It is the truth. When we come back and as we make our way through the hour, I can tell you what the union is saying. It released a statement yesterday, too. That's one of the topics that's in the mix. The Canada Post strike, 26 days and counting. Changing government as well. A lot of people say it's time for a change. In politics, it's time for a change at the top. But if you want to see a change, what kind of change do you want?
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Yes, it is. Tuesday Talkback. Marie, you're on the air, Marie, in Cambridge. Hi there.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, Marie. Go ahead.
Really just about the post office. I think they should be sent back by arbitration or legislation. I don't care which. I do think they're an essential service for more people than what you may think are essential, but they are essential. And as far as the government goes, I don't think any change is going to make any difference. It is what it is.
Oh, you don't think any change will make any difference at all? Really? Really? Okay. Okay. You don't think a change in government would make any difference? Why do you say that?
Pierre Poilievre is an awful person by everything he speaks.
Okay.
Trudeau, I think, is just rather flippant right now. And there's just nobody, there's no strong leader.
Okay. My grandfather used to say, not that I believe this, but my grandfather used to say the only difference between a liberal and a conservative is that one's in and one's out. It sounds like maybe that's your opinion. Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Marie, for sharing your opinion.
All right.
I appreciate it. Dylan is also calling from Cambridge, wants to talk about the Canada Post strike. Again, we've been asking, should the government intervene and end the strike? It's 2 weeks to go until Christmas Eve. Dylan, go ahead, Dylan.
No, definitely the government shouldn't intervene. It's a private entity that's, I guess it's funded by the government, but it's not an essential service. Let them work it out. The problem is the model doesn't work. Everyone knows it. That's the issue. We don't need mail brought to our house 5 days a week. What the government should do, or Canada Post should do, is offer the workers everything they're asking for, with the caveat that they're only going to be delivering mail 1 day a week. That's 20% of the workers delivering mail that's required. Offer anybody who's going to leave twice the compensation for leaving early. It's going to cost a little bit of money this year, but we're going to be down to 20% of the workforce, and we're going to have a model that actually works. I do believe Canada Post is required for our northern communities, and as a check balance for the private organizations delivering, to keep the prices in line. But like I say, it all comes down to the fact that no one in the country needs mail brought to their house 5 days a week, and until we change that, it's not going to get better.
Okay. All right, Dylan. Very interesting points all around. Thank you so much for sharing them. We will stop here because if I bring somebody on right now, you'd only have about 20 seconds to make your point. I want to give you more time than that. And we'll have plenty of time in the final 30 minutes of our Talkback here together on a Tuesday.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
So we've been talking about Canada Post and whether the government should intervene to end the strike at Canada Post, and federal politics with Canadians saying it's time for a change. And we've been asking if you think it's time for a change, what kind of change would you like to see? Some people wanted to know, what does the union want? Well, the union issued its own statement yesterday in this Canada Post strike. The union is seeking a 4-year deal. It wants a 9% raise for workers in the first year, 9% in the first year, followed by 4% raise, then 3% raises in the final 2 years. So all told, 19% raise over 4 years. The original demand was a 24% raise. The company's original offer had been 11.5% over 4 years. It says it has sweetened that without saying what it is. The union wants cost of living allowance, so that's adjustments to the pay depending on the rate of inflation. 10 medical days, in addition to the 7 personal days already in the collective agreement. They want an increase in short-term disability payments to 80% of regular wages. It's 70% right now. They want improved rights for temporary workers and what are known as OCREs, which is on-call relief employees. And then there are other different demands, whether the workers are represented by the rural and suburban unit or they're represented by the urban unit. But one of the main sticking points seems to be part-time work and contractors. The union says all part-time workers should be guaranteed 20 hours a week, and there should be no contracting out. And the management is saying, you're being unreasonable. The union even wants our part-time cleaners to become Canada Post employees. So it doesn't sound like a deal is imminent. And the two sides very far apart. Back to the phones. Greg in Calgary. Thanks for calling. Greg, you're on the air. Go ahead, Greg.
Hi, thanks very much for taking my call. Your last caller in took virtually every point I had on Canada Post. I agreed heartily with what he was saying. I would not want them to go back. I wish our offer was less. It's far too high as it is. If it's losing $1 billion in the public sector, you're out of business and you close. They must reduce it down to what's effective and keep it at a small deficit, a small profit, just like a nonprofit organization should be. So that's all I can say about that one because he took all the others. The other one I'll quickly hit on the politics has been, I've looked at our Prime Minister. can't say his name, it hurts, but he always has his shirt sleeves rolled up. He looks like, I'm out to work. He's still an actor. He's still doing his acting roles. No one folds a shirt 3 inches and then irons it and pretends that it's rolled up for action other than him. One more point. Please, everyone, stop saying the government spending. Let's start saying the people of Canada's money, the taxpayers' money are going to this, rather than making it sound like this city of Calgary, the province of Alberta, or the government of Canada has this force, this money that's coming from somewhere else. It's from us. It's our money. Let's say the people's money. So that's all I have.
All right, Greg, I hear you loud and clear, Greg. Thank you so much for your call today. John, also calling from Calgary today. Hi, John, you're on the air. Go ahead, John.
Good afternoon. I was one that phoned in about 3 weeks ago and likened the post office to the buggy whip. I haven't listened to every show, but I've kind of listened in where I could, and I've enjoyed the transfer of thoughts. Now, what I'd like to have come forward now is, as far as the government goes, we need to live within our means. We have to stop building deficits. Governments can't solve our problem. The government is our problem. And I'm afraid Mr. Trudeau and Mr. Singh believe that they want to position the government for people to accept that the government will solve their problem. They can't do it. In terms of the post office, I would hire a board that is not comprised of political lackeys. I'd get to be on the board that have to be directors would have to be currently on a successful business board. Then they would look to reset the management with good business practices and work things down from there. But I would not, and I emphasize not, have the government order them back to work. A couple of other things, I would change the whole system. I would make, there's nothing that says people have to have mail delivery 5 days a week. I would do mail delivery 2 days a week, but I would also do it on Saturdays as well. So you'd get Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday, and Thursday, Saturday. So you have alternate days 3 times a week. You could probably cut your workforce by half doing it that way. Your costs would go down dramatically. But one way or another, we have to get rid of the power of the union because, quite frankly, I understand people wanting to maximize their own return. It becomes a luxury that taxpayers clearly aren't willing to pay for any longer. Okay, those are my thoughts.
Okay. Again, I would just remind people, Canada Post, even the management says Canada Post is funded through the revenues that come into Canada Post through shipping fees and the sale of stamps and other services sold by Canada Post. That's how they fund their operations. It's not as though we're cutting a big check to cover Canada Post losses. The problem becomes what happens when operational funding at Canada Post runs out, which the Canada Post management has suggested to Parliament could happen early next year. It's late this year. Early next year is just around the corner, just a few weeks from now. Okay, thank you. Thank you for your call. We'll be right back. Take more of your calls.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Canada Post, the appetite for change in politics. 1-833-668-2577. Emerson in Calgary. Thanks for calling, Emerson. You're on the air. What's your opinion today?
Thank you, Rob. My opinion is this on Canada Post. Number one, it's a dying corporation. Our letter carrier, he's pretty much on the way out. He's got 29 years. He's got that 1 year to go. He says he starts at 8. He's done by noon, and he just goes back to the depot because they're not allowed to just go home because they're done early. They have to be there in case they're required somewhere else. He says, but the mail service is so low, it's pathetic. I think people have explored other options with this strike, and I think it's opened their eyes. And you know what? It should open their eyes because basically Canada Post holds Canadians hostage every single time they get an itch. They think it has to be scratched. So I hope it goes down in blazing flames. I really do. I'm tired of it. As far as Mr. Trudeau's concerned and Mr. Singh,
yes.
I think Canadians are going to send them a resounding defeat. They are tired of holding Canadians hostage, playing musical chairs, propping up the government when it's convenient for Mr. Singh and his little cronies and the NDP. And I have to tell you, I'm sad to say this, but I was married to somebody that was an NDPer, and I'm glad she's gone because she made no sense, just like Mr. Singh. Mr. Trudeau, if it wasn't for his father, he would never, ever, ever been elected. So as you can see, I'm pretty upset. I'm hot coming out of Calgary. I hope the NDP and the Liberals are decimated, and I think Poilievre will score a majority government never seen in Canadian history. Not because he's that great or popular or will make a difference, because Canadians are tired. Period. That's all I have to say. Thank you so much.
And you have said it. Thank you. Emerson, passionate as always when he calls Talkback. Kathy in Woodstock. Kathy, you're on the air. What's your opinion? You want to talk about Canada Post
like
as
Emerson,
well. Go ahead.
I'll tell you. Anyhow, with the Canada Post strike, I see two areas where it is dividing the opinion on this. One is the generation, age group, and the other is whether you're in an urban center or a rural area. And I can tell you, the older people who do not have wireless, they cannot do it for vision problems, mobility problems, and whatever. They are very not going to enjoy this Christmas because they cannot send the Christmas cards and the little gifts that they put in there to the family members that are nowhere near them. You'll also get the ones where there has been a death with a friend or a neighbor and they can't get out to the visitation. They don't have the screen capabilities to do it. They don't have anybody in their life to help them out. They are marooned. They are feeling very lost and very depressed about this. There are the junior seniors, the senior seniors. The junior ones, more of them are with the digital, but the senior ones, no. The other thing I see, urban versus rural. I live in a rural area. I'd moved from an urban center, and it was a bit different on the business scene. In the urban center, you had anyone come to service any utilities in your house, you had your credit card right there to pay on the dot. I moved out to the country. Oh, we'll send you an invoice. You know, you can write a check out and send it in the mail.
Yeah.
And it's still done that way today yet.
It is, yes.
Certain urban areas, like urban areas, don't need this the same as rural people do. And a lot of rural people, the way of the government, the way things are working, they are saying they are feeling like second-class citizens right now. They feel left out. A lot of the decisions are made by what they call the big city people, and we're being forgotten about. No doubt Canada Post is at a crossroads. Something needs to be done. What that is, I don't know. But don't forget about the older people that are still here.
Okay, well, let's kind of address the question that I'm asking today, which this happens sometimes as the afternoon goes on. The original question kind of gets lost. They've been on strike for 26 days. Christmas Eve is 2 weeks from today.
Yep.
The government has tools available to send everybody back to work. Should it do that?
Well, politically, they're not going to want to. People that are really missing the mail are pointing the finger at the government and saying, get them back. So that also is a divided question depending upon which side of the coin you're on.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Kathy. Great points. Really love the call. I think we have time for another one here. Brian in Waterloo. Thanks for calling. Brian, you're on the air. I also want to talk about Canada Post. Go ahead.
Hi, Rob.
Hi there, Brian. Go ahead.
I say send them back to work. Enough's enough.
Okay.
This is... I look at the requirements to be a Canada Post worker, and this is not rocket science. Like packages and letters. There's people out there working in the public sector that are responsible for people's lives that don't make as much as they do. So I say, be thankful that you have a decent job with Canada Post. If it's a dying breed, then find somewhere else to work, because that's just the reality of any job. It could disappear at any time, especially something that involves technology like postal work does. So I think send them back to work, and if they're not happy with their job, go find something else to do.
Okay, very interesting. Thank you for your call. Thank you. We have time for one or two more calls if you want to sneak in there as we wind down the Tuesday edition of Talkback, by all means. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
On Canada Post, Bill in Calgary has some thoughts. What's your opinion today, Bill? Go ahead.
Hi, Rob. So, a couple of things. First off, you hear a lot of people going, well, they got to legislate the workers back. They got to legislate the workers back. That's a bit problematic right now, Rob. First off, the government would have to be able to introduce new legislation to make that happen. So the opposition parties would have to make room for that in the middle of this filibuster. Secondly, the NDP have already come out and categorically stated they will not vote in favor of back-to-work legislation. It's a safe bet that the Conservatives aren't going to vote for back-to-work legislation because they're trying to be all things to the little guy right now. And I'm pretty certain Blanchette with the Bloc doesn't really care one way or the other, so he's probably not going to vote in favor either. So that means they wouldn't be able to get this legislation through, okay? So the second thing is...
Yeah, but again, Bill, if I could just interrupt there, because again, with the railroaders, that's not what they did. They went to the Industrial Relations Board route and ordered binding arbitration.
Rob,
Same thing they did with the port workers, you know?
Yeah, but Rob, they didn't have to do that. They didn't have to bring forward legislation because in the last two instances, those workers were locked out, okay? In this case, the postal workers voted to strike and went on strike based on a vote. That changes the dynamic. The government can't force anything. The only option they have is legislation in this situation. Okay. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I don't think people are really well aware of just how well off Canada Postal workers are in terms of benefits. I have a friend who works for Canada Post, God bless his soul. He's got 378 sick days banked, Rob. They carry them over every year, and they get to keep them, okay? The benefit package is obscene in relationship to the private sector. And the requests they have are equally obscene relative to what they want for the new benefits. The truth of the matter is, and one of your other callers said this, and he was dead on the money, it's a broken business model. It was never really a business model to begin with, which brings me to my last point, which is it is a crown corporation. So the government can replace the board. They could do that and put a board in that would negotiate a deal that would put the workers back together back to work tomorrow. But the reality of it is that this is a losing proposition from the get-go. The whole thing needs to be restructured, whether it's, minimized days of work, that sort of thing. My personal opinion is they need to bust the union and fix this. That's really what needs to happen. I feel very sorry for people in the rural communities. I understand that for a segment of the population, this is an important thing to have this service. But the reality of it is this service is going down the crapper, for lack of a better way to put it, no matter what they do, short of subsidization.
Okay. All right, Bill. Thank you. Thank you for your call. You make some very interesting points. Some of them I'm going to have to look into, like the idea of being able to send things off to binding arbitration using the Industrial Labor Relations Board or whatever it's called. I'm going to do some reading on that, in fact, right after the show. Lockout versus strike. I wonder, David, if it does change the dynamic the way Bill has suggested that it changes the dynamic. You don't know offhand, I suppose.
Not offhand, no. I have to talk to a labor lawyer. Maybe it's very complicated.
Yeah, I guess we're gonna have to fact check that. So look, that was a very busy couple of hours. Still, I mean, the longer it goes on, the closer you get to Christmas. A lot of people are really paying attention to the Canada Post and really thinking about what is in the best interests of Canadians everywhere across the country and what we need from a postal delivery service in the year 2024. Tomorrow, big news day tomorrow. I think, just going to take a guess here, I think our top story tomorrow, David, might be The Bank of Canada.
Oh, yes, it will be. Yes, it will be.
Right? Decision day from the Bank of Canada. I don't think there's much question that the Bank of Canada is going to cut rates. It's just a matter of how much will it cut rates? Will it be a 25 basis point cut? Will it be a 50 basis point cut? What will the bank say in its statement? If there's a news conference, what are they going to pull out of the governor of the Bank of Canada here at the end of the year? So we'll be all over that for you tomorrow. Join us again tomorrow. Thank you so much for today and all of your calls. More calls, more topics tomorrow on Talkback. The latest breaking news coming up next on News Radio.